Live.
Oh, hello, hello. On this 5th of July, I want to talk to you about past lives and share a few things I've learned in my time. So sit back and let's begin. Look at information for your soul to sing. The world sure needs us. Let's begin this flight. Greetings, fellow countrymen, earthlings. Hi, my name is Rob Meister. I hope you heard much of that intro. If you didn't, I wrote it just for this moment. It said, hello, on the 5th of July, I'm going to talk to you about past lives. So it's a subject I love. I love this subject. Wow. You know, we're living in such an interesting time where materialism and lack of spiritual values and spiritual consciousness is, well, everything you're experiencing right now could be summed up to or explained with the manifestation of materialism and emphasis on anything that pushes consciousness down, which is certainly the opposite of why I want to talk to you guys. I'm not coming to you from any point of authority. I'm a musician. I've been touring around the world for many years, well, actually mostly as a producer. I've had the pleasure of working with many great people in Latin America, where I lived for much of the last 20 years between there and the USA. I'm now living back in Australia, and I've been asked to come and talk to you. So, you know, it's really just a conversation between friends. So thank you very much for coming and spending time here with me. You know, everything you've done, all the great things you've done, all the stupid things you've done have led you to this moment. And thank you for joining me and allowing me to share some points of view with you that will hopefully enlighten you to, let's say, a deeper point of view of life. Okay, and most certainly, I'm going to show you ways that you can regain your own certainty about who you are. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, I could talk to you from a point of authority, or you know, and say this is the way it is, but you know, your immortality and your spiritual awareness is your immortality. It's your spiritual awareness. So nobody can actually determine that for you. No amount of indoctrination can give you that certainty. And this is why religion and spirituality is such a personal thing. So try to stay with me all the way if you can. I'm going to cover some important data about the history of this planet, and it will culminate in something somewhat of a climax. All right. So if you could stick with me all the way, that would be really, really awesome. One of the most important aspects of Scientology comes from a reference called personal integrity. And the fundamental of that is what is true for you is true for you. Okay. If it's not true for you, then it's not true. So I'm not here, again, to tell you what to believe or what to think. Rather, I'm here to help you look and come to your own conclusions, because, you know, at the end of the day, you have to know for yourself, as I've said multiple times. The subject of past lives is probably not foreign to you if you're joining me. But maybe, you know, I'm sure we have some that are here looking to be convinced. And when I was a boy, I knew I'd lived before. I had absolutely no doubt about it. I could remember things that occurred before I was born, before I was in this imperfect human body, and remember telling my parents about some of these experiences, and they were shocked and complete disbelief about that I had observed those things and consequently made less of them. And at that point in time, I learned to be quiet about my own experiences. But as time went by and I grew up and started to learn about life in more detail and learn more about Buddhism and then finding Scientology, I realized that there is obviously a lot of people out there, more people than what I imagined, that actually think along those lines. But the enemy to this kind of thinking and this kind of awareness is really summed up in group agreement, because you have personal points of view, and then we have what the group thinks, or the masses think. And a lot of truth can be hidden in what the masses think, mostly because the masses are, well, there's no such thing as the masses, of course, right? There is this idea of trying to fit in and trying to fit into the masses, but that is not the truth. It's what do you observe to be true, and is that true for you? And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And the whole focus on everything we do in Scientology is really just that, is to help you find the truth for yourself, okay? Group agreement can obviously be manipulated by the media or by trying to fit in, trying to conform. But historically, that has not been very successful for humanity, and I don't think it's very successful right now, personally. So, again, this is about direct observation rather than indoctrination. This is one of the few references that I've kept notes. Normally we show videos, but I have some good notes here. And we're going to go back to the first civilization on this planet, and that's the Sumerians, okay? About 4,000 years BC, farming and a whole civilization just sort of popped up in Mesopotamia, which is where Iraq, Iran, and Syria is right now. Very rich part of the world, magnificent history in that area, which is one of the reasons why it's so hot. And the Sumerians practiced a polytheistic religion. In other words, they believed in many gods, okay? And they also believed in an afterlife. This was not a new thing at all in that time. And then you fast forward 1,000 years or so, about 1,000 years, you've got the Hindus in India, which absolutely believed that you would live again. And this is where the subject of karma came into play, where the actions that you would take in your present life would bring you joy in the afterlife or not so joy. And there are 12 rules of karma, okay? And then we have Jainism, which taught that liberation of the soul from the body or from the physical world came with the right knowledge, the right path, and the right conduct, okay? And then we have the entrance of Buddhism. And Buddha, as some of you may know, was practicing Hindu, and he stepped away from his family because he did not quite agree with the status quo at that time. So he looked for a deeper answer, and he spent his time meditating and to try to free the soul or free himself from his body. And this is a common thing through all Eastern religions, that you are your soul, you are not a physical form, and that you are inhabiting a physical form. And so Buddha sought to regain personal immortality through meditation and by getting out of his body and not being dependent on the cycle of life and death, life and death, life and death. And he actually achieved that himself. And that state was known as Bodhi, which is named after the tree he was sitting under. And just that very idea really changed Asia. It turned Asia from a barbarism into a great civilization, because again, knowledge is the key. And when you speak truth to a spirit, they understand and they have realizations. And that is what completely changed Asia in that time. That was around 2,000 years before Christ, 2,200 or something like that. And there is tremendous evidence that Jesus himself spent significant time in Asia. But before we get to the works of Jesus Christ, we can look at the work of Taoism. And Taoism was another philosophy out of China. And Tao had a slightly different point of view. They didn't believe that there was living in the physical form. You were always just a spirit. You were in the energy, which is the Tao, okay? And that you were always that. And whether you were in a body or out of a body, that you were you, okay? And the only thing that changed was your state of mind, which is still the same. Now, I'm going to read you something here, which I found on a great website last night. And that is that many early Christians embraced reincarnation. And the article says, why is it that Christian religions appear to be so opposed to the concept of reincarnation? As it turns out, this attitude is a departure from the origins of Christianity. Nowhere in the Bible is reincarnation repudiated. In fact, it appears to be a concept that Jesus and his followers took pretty much for granted. Jesus himself speaks of John the Baptist as the return of Elias. That's in Matthew 11:14 and 17:11 and Mark 9-11-13. We must look to the developments of the Roman Catholic Church and its doctrines to understand how the concept of reincarnation lost favor in Christian tradition. So, okay, so now we're looking, Jesus was around 2,000 years ago. So around that time, the concept of reincarnation or past lives was quite common. So why would that be fought? And it says in this article, which I really like, it says the truth was reincarnation undermined the authority and power of the developing church. A believer in reincarnation assumes greater personal responsibility for his own spiritual evolution, relying less on the influence and control of priests, confessionals, and rituals to ward off eternal damnation. Wow. Now that is quite an intense statement. And I'm really not trying to step on anybody's toes here, because I wholeheartedly believe that most people in religion are good and are working for the greater good. But you could very easily see here that you have this subject of past lives or spiritual life or spiritual awareness or spiritual consciousness. And if a society was indoctrinated, or let's say, indoctrinated is probably not the correct term, but if there was an agreement that you would live again, then your personal responsibility for the actions you take would naturally be different. And if you knew that you would have to come back in another lifetime, then your viewpoint of how you would treat the environment, how you would treat animals, all the actions you would take, how you would treat your fellow man would be very, very, very different. And that is something that was fought. And in fact, it's not just aspects of the Catholic Church that were against past lives. This is something quite common, even going back into way earlier civilizations, even in the Sumerians, because this materialistic push was always there. There were those that did not believe the soul existed. They believed that everything was animal, everything was chemicals, everything was material. And there is this ebb and flow throughout history where materialism takes a stronghold, or when societies were much more spiritual, and historically they survived much, much better because you had this agreement that you were responsible. You see, your evolution depended on your actions and how you treated the environment and being one with the universe in that sense, okay? So if we look at present time, we see we live in a society where, well, spiritual values are not being taught. You know, I mean, America, which was founded on religion. I mean, I was living there for a number of years. There are great movements to remove the the idea of God and the national anthem from all the schools, all the public schools in America, because they want to get that out and focus on materialism, focus on the fact that everything is in the brain, everything is chemicals. You see, everything is about the body. And when you can get people to agree with those concepts, and that you only live once, and that everything is flesh and bone, that person is going to be, well, to say the least, not very optimistic about the future. Of course, there are some that do believe that, and they maintain that point of view, and they live a good life, and they don't do harm, and so forth, right? But if you look back at the lecture I gave, the talk I gave about 2 to 3 weeks ago on the emotional tone scale and knowing who to trust, you'll know that emotionally, people around a certain band become very reactive. They become very destructive to themselves and to the environment and to others when pushed into that band. And when a person doesn't have the freedom that they crave, and the freedom that they desire to be happy, or the freedom to create, or whether it be to do music or just go for a walk or give people hugs and things like that, what does that do to you emotionally? Well, you retract, and so you can't reach. And when you can't reach, your freedom is lessened. And that freedom is actually a spiritual freedom. See, it is in the state of mind, which is the state of being. And so by lowering consciousness and introverting a person more and more into their physical body, they become much easier to control. And this is certainly, from what I see, the greatest enemy of our society. You know, the atom bomb was developed out of the desire to destroy. You know, war is not developed out of the desire to enlighten a society. So we as a group of people, if you're listening to this talk, I believe you desire to have a better society, right? You want to be happier. You don't want to see corruption. You don't want to see degradation. All of these things, at the end of the day, reduce your happiness, right? So where are you going to go if a society keeps being pushed further and further and further down? And that's what we are responsible for as a group of people. And it's the only reason why I take the time to do these talks, because it's up to us to create a spiritual renaissance, okay? To put spiritual values back into society and help one another to become more enlightened, okay? And that brings me to the whole subject of Scientology, because Scientology is actually an Eastern-based philosophy. It has its roots in Hinduism, in Taoism, in Buddhism. The only difference being it's married with Western science, and the discoveries in science and physics, mathematics, all of these things were necessary to bring about something quite extraordinary in the discovery and isolation of the freeing of the human spirit. And that is this little baby here, okay? This little beautiful instrument is called an e-meter, okay? And the e-meter is used in Scientology counseling to help a person become free of the blockages that are preventing them from being free, or preventing them from remembering, or preventing them from having certainty on who they truly are as an individual. And the big difference between the application of Scientology counseling, which is called auditing, is the understanding of energy in great detail that Ron Hubbard was able to measure the state of mind of a person and the change of state of mind of a person, and in fact what the spirit is doing with the body, and how this actually works when a spirit is out of the body, when he's introverted in the body. All of these things affect your energy flows. Okay, and the meter doesn't do anything by itself, but it is used by a counselor to actually with the right questions to actually guide a person and help them find the truth for themselves. Okay, and this is a huge breakthrough in the subject of your own awareness and your own freedom of as a spirit, you see, because we are creators of energy. Everything we do is energy. Everything is a wavelength, you know, and we've become dependent on energy and very low forms of energy. And physical energy is very low energy. It's a low wavelength. It's very crude, okay? But you as a spirit, you deal with very high energy, high wavelength. But to the degree that you're introverted or unconscious about who you are and where you're going, and you have certainty of that, to the degree that you've lost that, you operate in very crude forms of energy. Okay, you don't operate purely in thought. And this is where Scientology has helped me tremendously. I mean, I just cannot tell you where I've gone from this very confused, drugged teenager. You know, I went from like being quite aware as a child to getting into the turmoil of families and the upsets and that whole area, right? And started taking drugs when I was 11, right? Crazy stuff. So between the age of 11 and 21, it was a very brutal time where I was trying to make sense of who I was, but drugs became a solution to somehow be free of this pain. And when I read the book Dianetics, I found that I actually could understand myself, and I could understand those past experiences. And through the application of Dianetics, I started on this path of reverting a life that was going the wrong way. I can tell you, it was going absolutely the wrong way. And unfortunately, many of the people I was with at that time didn't make it because they didn't take the opportunity, or they weren't ready for it, or however you want to look at it, right? But getting back to the discoveries in Dianetics, which I've done a number of talks about, I really hope you go back and look to about 3 or 4 weeks ago on the subject of Dianetics, because Ron Hubbard isolated the reactive mind. And the reactive mind is that part of the mind that you don't have control of. And stored in that part of the mind is all the pain, okay? Now, think about this for a second. Why can't you remember a past life? Well, let's say you were having a beautiful life. You had the perfect wife or the perfect husband, and you had the perfect family, and you had the perfect home, and you know, you had this beautiful property and this amazing veggie patch, and you had the animals, and you were set. And along came the cavalry, along came the Roman army, or the invaders, and they killed you. How would you feel about that? I mean, that would be rather painful, right? And those things are rather hard to remember because of the pain that is connected and associated with those moments. And Ron Hubbard discovered, or I should say really proved, that those parts, those memories are still actually there. They're just hidden in pain. And through the technique of Dianetics, you as an individual can become free of that pain, and so regain awareness of those past lives, or rather free. You can become free of the pain that is preventing you from really being yourself. Okay, because your memory is your memory. This is not a foreign thing. You know, this is something you use all the time, but pain itself is the great blockage in terms of understanding yourself and fully understanding your past. As he advanced his work in Dianetics, he found that around 50% of people were getting tremendous results with Dianetics, but there was another 50% that weren't getting the results that he wanted. And that's when he developed the e-meter, and that's when the research into Scientology went into much, much more detail. And the word Dianetics means the study of the mind, or what the mind is doing to the body. The word Scientology means the study of knowledge, or knowing how to know. And it's further defined as what the soul and awareness of the soul and the relationship of the soul between itself, other souls or other spirits, and all of life. Okay, so Dianetics is a study about the mind and the body, and the basics of Dianetics fully apply in Scientology. So you really need to read the book Dianetics to understand the later research and discoveries in Scientology, which embrace obviously the subject of the meter and the mind and energy and freeing the soul from the body. Okay, because it's really just about consciousness. You know, how conscious are you as an individual? And as you become more and more conscious, or more and more awake, your awareness of who you are and who you're not obviously changes. Because if we look at it, past lives are a fascinating subject, but they're not the be all and end all, okay? In fact, they're really not that important. I mean, for some people, it's a very fascinating subject. Who were you 500 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 10,000 years ago? Maybe for a status thing, you know, but these things are not important. What is important is now, and having all your consciousness now. You see, all your awareness available to you right now. And to that degree, understanding past lives is useful because it's been observed and can be observed, and you can find this out for yourself, that part of your attention is stuck in the past. In fact, you'll probably find a lot of your attention is stuck in the past. That's what Ron discovered. And he said about developing processes or procedures to help an individual become free of the traps of the past. In other words, he developed an exact path, step-by-step path, where you as an individual can regain full awareness of who you are and regain your power that is stuck in the past. Okay, and that's the use of the past. Who you were, what you were, all of these things may be a bit of fun, but they're not really that important. Okay, is that can you think with that? Does that make sense to you guys? You know, because life is about now, and it's about tomorrow and next week and next year. And it's about our collective consciousness and a collective happiness. And the more we can create that awareness, the more people can recognize who they are as spiritual beings, the more responsible they become, not less responsible. The more materialistic you make them, the more you force them into believing they just live one life. Interestingly enough, they become less responsible, less willing to determine, more interested in just immediate happiness, and less interest in long-term survival concepts. Okay, I hope that makes a little bit of sense to you. I'm going to read to you a little bit out of a book. Hi, Alexandra. I saw your comment, but it wasn't up there fast enough for me to answer you. But I'm going to read this little introduction here, which I like. This is from a book called Have You Lived Before This Life? Okay. And the introduction says, in the past, the term reincarnation has mystified man. The definition has been corrupted. The word has been taken to mean to be born again in different life forms, whereas its actual definition is to be born again into the flesh or into another body. In order that there can be rebirth, something must enter in. This is the being, the person himself. It is you. The existence of past lives is proven in Scientology. An adventure awaits you. It is a journey through restored consciousness of ages past. Once regained, your own natural memory of past experiences can never be blotted from your recollection again. Your journey is completely uninhibited by synthetic experiences, drugs, or hypnosis of any form, for it is the process of awakeness or awareness of restored knowledge and clarity of being. With Scientology, you are the judge of your own certainty in your past experiences, because you will know for yourself without reservation what they are. After all, you were there. The concept of reincarnation and man's belief in the past and future continuum is as old as man himself. It can be traced to the beginnings of 31 primitive cultures and has dominated almost every religion through history as a pivotal belief. The Egyptians, Hindus, Buddhists, Jainists, Sikhists, Brahmas, Neoplatonists, Christians, Romans, Jews, and Gnostics all believed in reincarnation and the rebirth cycle. It was a fundamental belief in the Roman Catholic Church until 553 AD, when a company of 4 monks held the Synod of Constantinople without the Pope present and decided the belief could not exist. Whoa, did you hear that? Let me read that again. It was a fundamental belief in the Roman Catholic Church until 553 AD, when a company of 4 monks held the Synod of Constantinople without the Pope present and decided the belief could not exist. They condemned the teachings of reincarnation as heresy, and it was at this time that references to it were expunged from the Bible. Without reference to the subject as the written word, the belief fell into the mystics and spiritualists of the Middle Ages. These too were defeated, but the belief persisted and again was rediscovered in the 19th century in the beginnings of psychology. The word psychology means study of the spirit, psyche, ology, spirit. Unfortunately, 19th century psychology said the spirit didn't exist, but that's another subject. Freud and Jung acknowledged man's belief in his own immortality and reincarnation. Their mistake was only in assigning this basic truth to imagination or fantasy. Today in Scientology, the stigma of the subject has been erased, and verification of the existence of past lives is fact. Through reading this book, it is hoped that you will rediscover for yourself the verity of your own existence, no matter how long ago forgotten. To some, these facts may come as a surprise. To others, it may be as casual as looking at an old photo album. But to everyone, it will be a unique and enlightening adventure into the past, all in the course of discovering a brighter future. All right, I love that. So this is a brief talk. I hope you found it interesting.
Just before you end off, I might just read out that question that came up before.
Oh yeah, sure.
It says, do you consider that the first thing we need to work on is self-awareness? And if you do, how should we do that?
Interesting question. Well, naturally awareness, okay. Let's look at this concept of self, which self as a spiritual being is not the same as self as a human being, because self as a spiritual being embraces all life. You see, you can't become aware in one part of life without becoming aware, increasing awareness in another part of life. Does that make sense? You know, the more awareness you have about humanity and different cultures, the more you become aware. Okay, conversely, the more aware you become just of yourself or your own body, the more you walk out into the world and you become aware of other people and their bodies. Okay, So the answer to your question is increasing awareness increases awareness. Does that make sense? You know, you can't go wrong, because a spiritual being is not necessarily a singular unit. A spirit embraces all life because we are all connected. And as to the second part of your question, how to do that, I would recommend studying and reading. You know, there is a tremendous amount of knowledge out there. Obviously, I'm a Scientologist. I would highly, highly recommend you read the book Dianetics, because, or the books Dianetics, because there are five Dianetics books. Evolution of a Science, which is a great one to start. Original Thesis, Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, Self-Analysis, and Science of Survival. These books will give you a very solid grounding into how the mind works, because understanding your mind is a key part of understanding all life. So to that degree, that would be a great place to start, because you know, again, once you understand the mind of yourself, you're understanding the mind of everybody, believe it or not, because all people have the mechanics of how the mind works is actually the same. Of course, your experiences are different to mine, your past is different to mine, but the mechanics of what prevents you from remembering your past are the same mechanics as what remembers me from remembering my past. Does that make sense? And that's what the books Dianetics are actually about. So yeah, hope that answers your question. Jason, any other?
They responded perfect, thanks.
Okay. Alexandra Fernandez, that's a very Latin name. I was saying I know a few Alexandra Fernandez from Mexico. Anyway, Annie, do we have any questions on Facebook Live there, Jason?
One second, it's been shared to a few places, just checking out the different ones.
You're from Colombia, muy bien. Yo conozco Colombia muy bien. Yo viví en México 6 años, pero let me speak English. I lived in Mexico 6 years, but I've spent a lot of time in Bogota and Cartagena, Barranquilla. Beautiful, beautiful country. Love Colombia. I love Latin America. It's an incredible, incredible continent. So that's awesome.
We have one more question here. It's what is the book Self-Analysis about?
Okay, the book Self-Analysis. That book, I honestly saved my life when I was 18. No joke. The book Self-Analysis gives you exercises or processes that you can do by yourself for 10, 20 minutes a day that actually increase your consciousness, increase your awareness, improve memory, and your general tone or your general emotional state. So the book Dianetics is about the reactive mind and the discoveries of the reactive mind and how to become clear of the reactive mind. So the book Self-Analysis came after Dianetics and is like a stepping stone. Basically, it's a whole series of processes that you can do on yourself, or you can apply to another person. They're amazing to run on other people, especially people that are not in good shape. People that have emotional issues, or people that have problems with alcohol. Self-analysis is absolutely incredible. So yeah, just processes you can do on yourself or help others just to increase their awareness and consciousness. So awesome, awesome book. Again, got me out of quite a situation when I was 18. Yeah.
Thanks,
Hope that helps.
That answers the question well.
Right on. Okay, guys. So, you know, it's a big subject. Okay, would you mind sharing? What's the rest of that question, Jason?
I just asked, would you mind to share over here the names and authors that you recommend us?
Yeah, well, the authors. Look, when it comes to knowledge, I mean, I can't recommend enough, you know, reading understanding basic things. I would recommend reading the Bible, of course, and reading the Quran and understanding life, you know, understanding all aspects of life. But I would recommend predominantly, if you really want to get in and increase your consciousness and awareness in a very direct fashion, I would recommend reading the Dianetics books by L. Ron Hubbard. There are 19 basic books that L. Ron Hubbard wrote, and I would recommend you read them all. Jason is going to put a link at the bottom for the basic books. You can also go to our website, Scientology.tv, and you can watch a bunch of films there, which are very enlightening. One of my favorites is what I spoke about last week, is the book Scientology, The Fundamentals of Thought by L. Ron Hubbard. There's a film that you can watch online there. Yeah, you know, study life, man. You know, there's a lot of great information out there. However, there are some you know, things I wouldn't recommend, but yeah, I'm not going to go into that in great detail. You know, I'm here to share what's worked for me, and that's what I recommend. All right.
Thanks, Robert. I think we can end up the live stream there. I've posted the links.
All right, guys. Oh, another thing, if I can answer any personal questions, my email is robert@robmeister.com. You can just email me directly. I'll be happy to communicate with you and share references with you and, you know, help you on your own adventure. Okay. So feel free to write to me, and all the best.
Thanks, Robert.
Happy Sunday.